To the weather. Yes, it's summertime. It gets hot, but what we're talking about now is record-breaking heat in some parts of the country. Ginger is in Philadelphia for us. Ginger, we're talking some 100 million Americans now on alert for dangerous conditions.
Yes, and that, of course, then fuels severe storms. And we had, TJ, more than 500,000 customers lose power. A lot of folks waking up this morning without power, and you can see why. In these images from Chicago, there were more than 300 storm reports, many of them damaging wind. But this was a supercell that traveled more than 100 miles. That is hard to do. Those are the types that often have circulation or tornado warnings on them. So that blew through the east side of Chicago all the way down the lake there. And then you see the trees down in Maywood, Illinois. We had power outages and trees down around Pittsburgh. And this morning you can see why. That's that warm front. We've got the little action happening just west of us here in Philadelphia. And from Washington, D.C. to Wilmington, North Carolina, you've got a shot this morning and early afternoon of seeing damaging winds and even a little twist. There were a couple of pockets back in the plains, but again, that heat, this is what impacts everyone. Everyone is touched by this. So if anybody is outdoors or works outside, extended time out there, George, places like Detroit, Cincinnati, even Minneapolis, in an excessive heat warning, look at those numbers. It'll feel even hotter than it is.
Boy, they are really something, Oki Jr. Thanks very much.
Detached from reality. That's how the former U.S. Attorney General William Barr described Donald Trump after the 2020 election. Speaking on a second day of public hearings into last year's attack on the Capitol, he said he'd showed no interest in the facts. Mr. Trump has called the U.S. Congressional Committee investigating the storming of the building a kangaroo court. Mr. Trump's former campaign manager, Bill Stepien, was not able to appear, so the committee used video clips from his earlier testimony. Let's take a listen to what he and Bill Barr had to say.
My belief, my recommendation was to say that votes were still being counted. It's too early to tell, too early to call the race, but you know, we proud of the race we ran, and we, you know, think we're in good position, and we'll have more to say about this, you know, the next day or the next day, whenever we had something to say.
And did anybody who was a part of that conversation disagree with your message?
Yes.
Who was that?
The president disagreed with that. I don't recall the particular words. He thought I was wrong. He told me so, and you know, that they were gonna, you know, go he was gonna go in a different direction.
I did not agree with the idea of saying the election was stolen and putting out this stuff, which I told the president was bull. And you know, I didn't want to be a part of it.
Earlier, we heard from our North America correspondent, David Willis, who's been following this.
Well, he's put out a statement, and he's also, of course, got his Truth Social, which is his own sort of version of Twitter, not anything like as large, of course. But central to this investigation is proving, if it's possible, that Donald Trump knew that the election result had not been stolen from him, but continued to put that falsehood out into the public arena. And indeed, in that 12-page statement that Donald Trump released tonight, if anything, he doubles down on his assertion that the outcome of the election was the crime of the century, as he put it. He also said that the select committee that's been examining this issue has made a mockery of justice, as he put it. But this is an important point, because in order to prove this point and to move anybody who might be on the fringes of the Republican Party over to the Democratic side of things, that has to be proven that Donald Trump lied and did so knowingly. Well, an awful lot of Republicans actually agree with him and believe that the result of the 2020 election was stolen from them. So this is a very difficult point to make in a deeply polarized country such as this just now.
David Willis there.
The bottom line is this. I truly believe we've made extraordinary progress by laying a new foundation for our economy, which becomes clear once global inflation begins to recede. There's so much at stake. But the truth is, I've never been more optimistic about America than I am today. I really mean it. I travel the world trying to put things back together. You know, Trump did not leave a very good situation. You think I'm kidding? No matter where I go in the world, whether it was the Inter-American Conference we just had for this hemisphere, or NATO, or dealing with the ASEAN countries or the Far East, guess what? They look at me and I say, America's back. And they look at me and they say, for how long? This is America. We can do any damn thing we put our minds to. And guess what? We're not going back to the false promises of the trickle-down economics. We're going forward. We're going forward.
President Biden will travel to Israel, the West Bank, and Saudi Arabia next month. During the 4-day trip, he's going to meet with leaders from all over the region. So Nancy Cordes is joining us now from the White House to talk a little bit more about this trip that we really just learned about this morning. So Nancy, give us the deets. What do we know? Tell us what is likely to happen.
So this is going to be a whirlwind trip, Vlad and Anne-Marie. He's going to first go to Israel, then to the West Bank. He'll meet with the Palestinian leader, Mahmoud Abbas, and then probably the most controversial leg of this journey, he is going to go to Saudi Arabia. And that is something that even some members of his own party have discouraged him from doing. They argue that the crown prince is a pariah, Mohammed bin Salman, because of his involvement in killing a U.S.-based journalist, Jamal Khashoggi, and other human rights abuses. They say the president should stay as far away from him as possible. But you've heard the president over recent weeks kind of laying the groundwork for this trip, saying that he'll talk to anybody who can help the U.S. economically. And obviously, Saudi Arabia and the surrounding countries have a great deal of oil, which is crucial to the White House right now as the U.S. faces record high gas prices. So he is going to be going to Saudi Arabia, meeting with the King Salman, and with the Crown Prince.
Yeah, and I hope, Nancy, I know that there's been a lot of interest and focus, rightfully so, on that potential meeting with the Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman, where hopefully the president will ask about the journalist from the Washington Post, Mr. Khashoggi. But I also hope that when he is in Israel, the president talks about reporter Shirlene Abu Akleh, who was killed covering activity in the West Bank. She's an American citizen.
Right. And the White House officials that we're speaking to say that the president always brings up human rights abuses when he's abroad, human rights issues. They say he'll talk about that in Israel and in the West Bank. They say he'll talk about his desire for a two-state solution and kickstarting that process. And they insist that he will be talking about human rights in Saudi Arabia as well. Now, here's the interesting thing. Here at the White House, the officials we've been talking to are really downplaying the amount of interaction that the president is going to be having with the Crown Prince. They say, well, he's going to be meeting with King Salman. And of course, the Crown Prince is part of King Salman's inner circle. And so he'll be seeing the Crown Prince as well. But guess what? The Saudis have put out their own statement in which they make it clear that President Biden is going to be meeting one-on-one with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. And they kind of tick through this whole laundry list of issues that the two of them are going to be discussing. They say they'll hold official talks that will focus on various issues of bilateral cooperation, exploring cooperation on technology, economic investment, space, renewable energy, cybersecurity, and on, climate and the rest. And so the Saudis are making it very clear that President Biden is actually going to be spending some serious quality time with the Crown Prince, even as the White House tries to downplay that part of the trip. Mm-hmm.
All right, Nancy Cordes for us at the White House. Nancy, as always, we thank you.
You're welcome.
This morning, we'll tell the story of how Donald Trump lost an election and knew he lost an election, and as a result of his loss, decided to wage an attack on our democracy, an attack on the American people by trying to rob you of your voice in our democracy, and in doing so, lit the fuse that led to the horrific violence of January 6th.
President Trump rejected the advice of his campaign experts on election night. and instead followed the course recommended by an apparently inebriated Rudy Giuliani to just claim he won and insist that the vote counting stop, to falsely claim everything was fraudulent.
I was somewhat demoralized because I thought, boy, if he really believes this stuff, he has, lost contact with he's become detached from reality if he really believes this stuff.
Throughout the committee's investigation, we found evidence that the Trump campaign and its surrogates misled donors as to where their funds would go and what they would be used for. So not only was there the big lie, there was the big ripoff.
Chris Hayes, let me start with you.
Well, I thought that that first section about the room that night was really key for a few reasons. One is that it's a top-down operation. That Donald Trump, along with the, quote, apparently inebriated Rudy Giuliani, in the infamous words of Liz Cheney, is the one directing them towards this premature call, right? It's not, you get a lot of this exculpatory or attempts to apologize for Trump by being like, well, he was surrounded by bad people. Oh, when everyone went away, then it was just the Sidney Powells and their Mick Mulvaney today tweeting about garbage in, garbage out. To which my response is like, what's the president then? Right? So in this case, you don't have the all the yahoos were around him. You hear this all the time, the accounts of those weeks, right? Oh, it was everyone had gone and it was Flynn and it was all these people, they were all nuts. He was like, no. It's him.
It's election night, and all the adults are supposedly still in the room.
Professional campaign operative, people, the data guy, the numbers people, they're saying, look, we're looking at blah, blah. So that to me was really crucial about establishing that this wasn't the work of the wrong influence around him. This was the work of Trump from the jump.
For the first time in a long time, the Senate has a path forward on legislation that will save lives, reduce gun violence, and keep our communities safe. Make no mistake about it, we have a lot of work left to do before we actually pass a bill. But yesterday's announcement was a positive and necessary step in the right direction. I urge my colleagues to think of all the lives we can now save by turning this framework into law. Americans have waited long enough for us to take action. Too many lives, too many, have been already lost. Too many families, too many, have been left grieving. While we can't undo the tragedies of the past, we can act now to make them less likely in the future. This framework, if enacted into law, will do precisely that. And I urge all of us to continue working to pass gun safety legislation soon.